Hello, Gen Genies. It's me, Julie.
And Rich.
Before we get started today, we want to let you in on some exciting news. We have launched our new Patreon page for the podcast.
Woohoo! We are super excited about this new chapter for CutOff Genes.
So, Patreon is a website where listeners like you can pledge a small monthly amount. We're talking only $5 or $10, guys, to support the podcast and help defray the costs of bringing you the show each week.
To be clear, CutOff Genes will continue to be absolutely free. But to thank you for your support, we are going to offer our patrons some fun little extras.
Like early access to the podcast every week, where you'll get to hear the latest episode before it's released to the general public.
And why not make your friends jealous with exclusive patron-only CutOff Genes swag?
Fancy. And here's something you guys have been asking for, and I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to host a monthly, hour-long, online Ask Me Anything session where patrons at the $10 level can literally ask me anything.
Anything? You're a brave woman, Julie.
You know, I know. I'm also going to give access to my blog, Are You My Father?, where I tell the story of my search, actually it's my life story basically, for my biological father in even more detail than I did on the podcast.
Wow, your blog was the original inspiration for CutOff Genes, wasn't it?
It was.
Wow. Well, all patrons at any level will receive a shout out on the podcast along with our undying gratitude for your support.
Yep. You guys know that this show is a labor of love for me. It's something I'm very passionate about. It'd mean so much to me if you would consider supporting our work here on the podcast by going to patreon.com/CutOff Genes podcast.
That's Patreon, patreon.com/CutOff Genes podcast.
We'll add a link to it on the podcast and on the Facebook page. Thank you all, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Woo!
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip hip hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Genes.
Welcome to CutOff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I'm Richard Castle, the producer and co-host of this podcast. How's it going, Julie?
It's going well, thank you. I just swallowed water. What's going on? Anything fun?
I'm trying to also remain hydrated. It's very windy here today.
It's super dry.
And it's dry. So if you hear a frog in my throat,
let him out.
Let him out. If you hear me clear my throat and go and a little sip of water, just forgive me.
If the frog comes out, will he do, hello, my baby, hello, my honey?
Oh my God, I love that cartoon.
Hello, my rock time girl.
What was his name? Something J Frog.
I have no idea.
There's a name.
Is there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's a bit my husband always does.
It's really great.
It is funny.
Because when he is just the frog, he just kind of goes...
Ribbit. Yep. Yep.
And you can see, like, in the way it's animated, like it goes from one side of his mouth to the other. And it just looks, it's hysterical. Those old Warner Brother cartoons are the best.
They're the best.
Because I grew up watching those like they were Saturday morning cartoons. That's what we watched. You probably didn't know that.
What else would you do? No, we had Saturday morning
Did you?
cartoons
Okay.
too. We also had after school cartoons. And we had The Wonderful World of Disney on Sunday night.
Oh, yeah. And we had that. And we had the Creature double feature. This was in Boston.
Oh, we didn't do
on
that.
Saturday.
Was that the Sid and Marty Krofft thing?
No.
Oh,
This
okay.
was like, it was a local thing in Boston. And any of the Boston listeners of a certain age will remember this.
Yes. You have talked about this before.
Yeah. And they showed two 90-minute movies, usually sci-fi or horror, like The Mummy and The Mummy Returns or Kong and Son of Kong.
Or The Incredible Shrinking Man that we spoke about in one of the very first.
Yes. They always show those. And I love those Creature double feature, even though some of them were really bad movies. But,
You know what? Sometimes things are so bad, they're good.
When you're a bored kid in Boston.
It's the best.
You could 3 hours in front of the TV.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It helped feed my pop culture references for years.
And look at where you are now with it.
Right? Come a long way, baby.
Okay. I have an update from To the Letter Genealogy. If you remember, that was the company in Australia that has started using artifacts, distracting DNA from artifacts like envelopes and stuff. So they sent an update recently. and said that they are introducing new techniques to improve their results for customers. To date, while we've successfully genotyped DNA from customer artifacts, we want and need to improve our results. For this reason, we now have a set price of $450 for extractions. That's $450 Australian, which is closer to $300 US, I think.
Ooh, it still sounds like a lot of money.
Yeah, but if you consider that it's from artifacts, you got to start somewhere.
Do you have to? We talked about this, but do you remember? Do you have to pay that if they can't extract the DNA? Like you give them an envelope, and then for some reason the DNA they can't get it.
I think there's a small extraction fee, but you don't pay the entire fee.
Gotcha. That's right.
Although she says $450 for extractions. Oh, here we go. Which will include the cost of the new techniques. A further payment is required if the customer wishes to have the artifact returned. Why wouldn't you? Depending on size and weight. Our new technique involving both cleaning up the DNA and making more DNA available for processing. The main benefit of the new techniques is that we will be able to process more samples in the microarray, which is a much cheaper than whole genome sequencing. Customers are asked on checkout to state whether their preference is for genotyping, which is whole genome sequencing, as the techniques we use can preclude whole genome sequencing. This is a tongue twister. If we are working towards genotyping, I have no idea what I just said. As always, our processes take longer than we hope. Customers are welcome to place orders now for extractions for all artifacts types. After discussing the potential order with the to-the-letter DNA via email.
I love that concept of it longer than we hope.
Right.
Like
so they're basically saying we're trying really hard, but basically this is new.
It's like calling up and say, when will my pizza be ready?
I
longer
hope
than
soon.
will we hope.
That's actually pretty good.
Can we be more specific?
Yeah. No. Yeah. So basically what they're saying is they're making their sequencing easier, hopefully faster, but be able to provide more DNA. And it actually is a little cheaper than it was at first.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's the hope that as more and more people do it and it gets better, the technique gets better and is more refined, that it would become cheaper to do.
Yes.
Right? Which is why we can, go to Ancestry for whatever it is, $70 to $100 as opposed to $1,000 where it probably cost early on to do something.
Yeah. Okay.
I still question, like, how old does this artifact have to be? In other words, what if I'm just trying to get... remember there was a woman who wanted to get DNA from her mother, and her mother didn't want it?
Right. It doesn't have to be old at all.
Really? So this woman could, like, literally have her mother lick a stamp?
It can't be from a living person.
Oh, okay.
Is the rule.
That's it. Okay.
Right. So it can be, an artifact from.
Remember, she wanted to get it off her mother's body from the morgue or something.
Right.
And her mother wasn't even dead yet.
But she refused. The fact that she refused to supply a sample tells us she didn't want anyone to have her DNA.
Oh, I've told that story at parties.
It's a great party story.
It is really great.
It is.
And what else do you do, Richard? I'm like, well, I host this podcast, and you got to hear this. About the woman who's so eager to get her mother's DNA sample that she can't wait for her to die so she can ask the coroner to scrape it off of her corpse.
Horrible. That's a thing. We've talked about that
I
before.
I know. It just still amazes me. But anyway.
I know.
But I digress.
Yes, you do. Here's a little genealogy standard that I noticed yesterday because somebody posted about it. It said, it's my understanding that surnames should be written in all caps to distinguish them from other names. I've noticed a lot of people don't do this. Is this the correct format or is it outdated? So, the reason it was considered standard is because a lot of people have first names and last names that are similar. Like their first name sounds like a last name.
Oh, okay.
And vice versa. So if they do the last name in all caps, then you can differentiate
all right.
what the name is. However, I did some research. Uppercase surnames are no longer considered a genealogy standard. So if you have your surnames in all caps, it will trigger a potential problems warning. That's in Legacy Family Tree software. That's where I got this from. I don't know if all sites will do that because I've seen a lot of trees that I've used on Ancestry that I've got information from that have the last names all in all
I
caps.
see. Well, even you, like your last name is Jackson. I mean, that could be somebody's first name. Right?
It can, but
Jackson Brown.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but the standard now is that the last name comes at the end, unless there's a comma between them, which tells you that name in the front is the last name.
Right. But some people forget they neglect their commas.
And don't get me started.
I know. No, I know. I mean,
commas are so important, everyone.
It really helps when you're reading a sentence to have a comma.
Sure does.
Yes. Or a semicolon.
What is it? It's the difference between let's kill grandma. Let's kill grandma. No, that's not right.
I don't think so. You can think it's another example.
When you're trying to get your grandma to destroy somebody.
Let's eat, grandma,
yes,
or
it.
let's eat grandma. That's better. Your verb was wrong.
It shows where my mind goes.
Like you're telling your grandmother, "Let's go kill someone."
Let's kill grandma. No, I was talking about doing karaoke. Let's go kill it, grandma.
What? When do you go?
Let's kill.
Go karaoke with your grandmother.
Okay. Do you remember asking me, "Hey, how was your karaoke last night?" And I said, "I killed."
Okay. Yes, but I don't remember you mentioning that your grandmother was there.
I have no grandmothers, and I have never karaokeed with any of them. So there you go.
I grew up and I had two grandmothers, but both of my grandfathers died before I was born.
Yeah.
Right? So I never knew them. And I remember my mother talking about her dad, my grandfather. Mm-hmm. And it was always such a weird thing to think that she had someone that important in her life before I knew her, because she was my mom.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's a strange thing.
My mother's mother died, I think, after I was born, but she was in the U.S. My mother hadn't seen her in 15 years. Mm-hmm. So she and it was weird because I came home from school one day and my mother seemed to be a little sad. And I was like, "What's wrong?" She's like, "Oh, my mother died." And I don't remember being really, I guess I thought, wow.
Right.
It's because I didn't know her and I didn't, Now that I think about it, I'm like, is this speaking of my relationship with my mother? It's very strange.
Well, I mean,
because
I just think when you're a kid,
it's very abstract.
It's abstract, and it's all about you and your like as if your mother didn't have a life before you were born, and of course she did. Right?
Although she denies it, or she denied it with everything.
Right. But it's fascinating. I think that even for now, like when I meet people, new friends or something, and they didn't know my mom as you did, right? Mm-hmm. My mom died 16 years ago, mm-hmm. and so it's just weird to know that these people didn't know me when I had a mother, right? And like it's interesting with older friends who remember things from your childhood or whatever. It's a different relationship, isn't it? Because they know more about you, they know more of you and your history, and it's real to them because they know they had met the people you tell stories about. I tell stories on this podcast, my mother, my father, and you've met these people, or at least my mom.
I don't think I ever met your dad.
Yeah. But for people, when I tell this story to people I know now, mm-hmm. they have no frame of reference.
Yes, when you tell a story about your mom, I can visualize her.
Right.
And imagine her saying it.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
And that's how I remember, that's how I relate to it with my mom telling stories about her dad. And she would get choked up about it. And it was so weird because I thought, oh, I don't know this person. I know that he's related to me, but I don't know how we got there from
how
surnames.
How did we get there from let's kill grandma?
Let's kill grandma. Well, it's a genealogy podcast.
Yeah, at least we're talking about a relative.
Right? Exactly. It's all relative.
That's another podcast. That's everything's relative.
It's all, relative.
It's all. The readiness is all. Shakespeare, everyone. We're going to take a break now.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans Podcast. Now back to Julie and me.
All right. I saw a headline this morning.
Just one?
Just the one. And it entertains and irritates at the same time. Oh. So it says, alleged secret son of Bee Gees singer Morris Gibb denies claims he wants money.
Okay.
So first of all, the reason it delights me is because I have another DNA story. And the reason it irritates me is that why do people think that all adoptees contacting their family want money?
Right.
It's not a thing. Everybody, stop saying that.
I think I honestly, to be devil's advocate, it's because it's the son of a famous
person.
rich person.
But there are even people that I talk to people that don't want to be involved because their first thing is, well, this person comes out, what are they going to want? I'm like, shut up.
I know.
What's so great about you?
Well, I mean, even was it just last week we talked about that Delphine, and she was the daughter of the king,
right?
And she didn't want any money. It turns out that she was actually wealthier than she came from more wealth than the royal family.
Exactly,
it was more about truth to her than finances,
as it is for most of us.
Of course,
even royalty.
Of course.
Okay, so here's the story. The musician, 51, was adopted but discovered his link to the Bee Gees singer after reuniting with his biological mother, Patty, who had mixed with the stars as a music studio manager.
So to speak. That's a euphemism.
Yeah.
Mixed with the stars.
Not at all. Okay. He says, and his first response was because I hate this headline. I hate that headline. And the first response was, I'm not entitled to anything. I was adopted. By law, I'm a different family. Yes. You're not entitled, guys. Morris died in 2003 at the age of 53. He was only 53?
Well,
I had no idea he was
Andy
that young.
Gibb was like in his 20s, wasn't he?
But
Or
he
30?
had a condition.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he wasn't one of
Drugs.
the Bee Gees. He wasn't one of the Bee Gees either.
He may as well have been.
Well, he was a Gibb brother.
He sounded just like them. He was the best looking one.
He was with Victoria Principal.
Yes.
Remember that?
And they say he died of a broken heart because she broke his heart. That's what I hear.
Oh, that's so sad.
I don't care.
And didn't they write the song, How Do You Mend a Broken Heart?
For when he died?
No. I don't know. Maybe so. But that was their... Yeah, how can you mend it? Yes. It was made...
Aren't you glad I sang that, you guys?
No, but it was made into a hit by somebody else, but the Bee Gees did record it, and they wrote it.
I think they wrote it before he died.
Yeah, probably.
Let's look that up,
It's
though.
a great tune.
It sure is,
It's
and that's a great
great.
tie-in that I really need to kind of go down a rabbit hole for.
Do you know when I heard that song again, and I hadn't heard it in so long, was, believe it or not, in the Sex and the City movie, the first one.
I hate it.
You hated the movie?
I hate Sex and the City.
Oh my gosh. Actually, I will digress as I'm wont to do.
Yes.
I will just say that when that first movie came out, I was really surprised at what a good job they did because the series had ended. Mm-hmm. They really made that story about forgiveness. How do you forgive somebody who hurts you so badly? Because in the movie, she is stood up at the altar
by
Mr. Big, and it's devastating, and it's a big wedding. It's humiliating, and it really becomes about how do you come back from that. And I thought that was such an interesting way to go for a series that was about, sex and relationships and stuff. And I thought...
And shoes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Sure.
Yeah.
But I tried watching it once, and I was so irritated. And call me petty.
Petty.
Thank you. And I know I am, but certain things just turn me off of things. And the fact that she walked around New York City in Manolo Blahniks drove me nuts.
Really?
Nobody can do that.
Why not?
Have you ever walked around New York City?
Yes.
Have you ever walked in Manolo Blahniks?
No.
Right. You cannot walk all around the city in 5-inch heels. You just can't. It's not a thing.
There are subway
Especially
grates
if you're
and-
over 30. I mean, seriously. You can maybe fake it when you're in your 20s if you really care and are very vain.
Yeah.
But, no. That took me out of reality. Even though I know the whole thing is a fantasy
That
thing.
is so funny.
I'm an idiot.
Although I will say, I was in New York in November, and you walk a lot in that city, and I was wearing dress shoes for a good deal of the time, and my tootsies were killing me.
Last time I was in New York, I wore Danskos, which are those clogs that they made for nurses who are on their feet all day.
Yeah.
So I thought that'd be the perfect thing to wear. Well, no. So they're good for standing all day, but not walking all day on uneven pavement. I had the worst blisters.
Nurses regulation.
I know. Wow, we really got off topic this time, didn't we?
Well, I think Bee Gees and Sex and the City and Manolo Blahniks and Walking in New York have a lot in common.
Walking in New York, like in that video on Staying Alive, they're walking in. Okay.
Yeah.
I did it.
Well, you can tell by the way I walk.
Do you know what those lyrics are?
No.
Well, you can tell by the way I use my walk. I'm a woman's man. No time to talk. And then, you know, da-da-da-da-da-da. You know what that is?
No, I have no idea.
What you're doing on your back.
Come on.
Yes.
Isn't it funny that you can listen to something probably hundreds of times over a lifetime?
And you have no idea what they're saying?
Yeah.
You know why I know that?
No.
Because I did a show where we sang that song.
Really? What show was that?
It was an industrial show.
Oh, okay.
One of those reviews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. You know what? It just goes to show you, though, that it almost doesn't matter sometimes what the lyrics are to those things. It's more about the groove.
Absolutely.
Right?
Especially what you're doing on your back. I mean, that's nasty. Okay.
Oh, my goodness.
Anyway, back to
the Bee Gees and
back to the Bee Gees' love child.
Yes, the love child.
The secret love child. He wasn't a secret love child because I'm sure Morris Gibb didn't know anything about him, so it wasn't a secret.
Oh, it was a secret from Morris.
Yeah. Yeah, and the kid was adopted, so the only person it was a secret for was him, really. Anyway, so...
Do you know, okay, because that headline was so sensationalized.
Yes.
Where was that from? Do you remember where you saw it? Was it
a British newspaper? And I clicked on the link, and I also watched him on a talk show.
Okay.
In England, and I thought, well, they're trying to sensationalize this, and it kind of irritated me. But then I looked. This was posted by a woman on Facebook in a group, and it turns out she is this guy's partner.
Oh, wow.
And she posted about it. And she also manages the Facebook page, Bee Gees' Love Child. So I'm like, oh, well, there is a little, there's a little something to this.
I almost want to go and visit this page, Bee Gees' Love Child.
Of course you do.
Because to me, that's a great name for a song.
Bee Gees' Love Child.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
To me, though, a Bee Gees love child is not actually a love child of the Bee Gees. It's just somebody who was conceived while their parents were listening to the Bee Gees in the 70s. That's how it works.
Oh.
In my song, when I write this song,
I see.
Bee Gees love child.
The Bee Gees aren't actually involved.
No, they
in
were just
the conception
they
of
were
love
on
child.
the radio, or the LP was playing.
Good to know.
Weren't the Bee Gees Australian?
They were British, but they were raised in Australia.
Okay. I somehow thought they were Australian.
They spent a lot of their childhood in Australia, then went back to England.
Okay.
They never had Australian accents. They are not an Australian band. There, I've said it.
Wow.
Okay.
She's the authority.
Yeah. So he went looking for his mom, I guess a few years ago, and he posted something on some missing persons website, as you did back then before DNA, and he actually got a response from her. And he said he had a surreal meeting with her. I guess she was odd. And she told him that his dad was Chris Andrews from a 1960s rock band, Fleur de Lis. So all of a sudden there's an MPE. This is all getting very familiar. Because, I was told my dad was somebody else.
Yeah, but not another rock star.
No. Well, she ran a studio, so she spent a lot of time with rock stars.
Yeah. Fleur de Lis, Bee Gees, they're all the same.
I've never heard of Fleur de Lis, have you?
No.
No. I got engaged in the restaurant Fleur de Lis, though. Anyway.
Oh.
I digress. Okay, so... but get this, after he was told that was his father, he contacted the guy, and the guy was into it. He's like, yeah, really? The guy from Fleur de Lis.
Yeah, because
right.
he's like,
oh yeah, I remember that.
Well, maybe she had relations with him too.
Well, she did.
Oh, see, there you go.
She did. But then they took a DNA test. Wait, they had a relationship for 2 years before he took the DNA test.
It is like your story.
It is like my story. Yeah. I'm having PTSD right now.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it wasn't. So he was back to the drawing board, as you say.
And then to find out, no, I'm actually a child of somebody even more famous.
Even more famous than the guy from Fleur de Lis. In 2010, he approached Patty's sister because she stopped talking to him apparently, who told him that Morris was his biological father.
Is there proof now? Because now I'm wondering if maybe it's like Bruce Springsteen. Like,
yeah, no, it is.
Else.
There is. Well, listen to this. Where does it say? She said if the sister said if it's not Chris, then it's Morris, because I know for a fact that she was with Morris. Morris's widow Yvonne wants nothing to do with this, obviously, and
yes.
they have a son Adam and a daughter Samantha. So
he has half siblings.
Yes, ultimately Adam did test. He approached the family; they didn't want anything to do with it. However, Adam did do a ancestry DNA test.
Okay.
So, and he doesn't know whether or not he did it just as a favor. In fact, he thanked him on the TV. He's like, if you did that for me, thank you.
I see.
But
it proved that he is the loved child.
Yeah.
The Bee Gees' loved child.
Yes. He's a half sibling they share the same father. So, the only thing he wants to connect with them, he says, because they're musicians, and I've been a musician all my life, and he is a musician, which makes sense.
Right.
So I get that. I absolutely get that. I think for me, I was happy to know that my mother sang, but there were really no professionals in my family, and that wouldn't have been the reason to connect with my family. It would have been cool,
right?
To say, oh, that's where this comes from. But I don't know if you should just. I don't know what I'm saying.
Well, it's complicated, isn't it? The family already said we don't want to have anything to do with this guy.
Well, yes, the mother said that,
right?
And understandably so, although
we don't necessarily know, do we? Like whether
it was before that's
she
a really
was married,
good question.
Because
that makes a huge difference.
It doesn't,
to me.
It though.
But it doesn't to some people. But I think it makes it. I feel much more comfortable reaching out to people if their child happened before they were married,
right? Before the relationship they were in it definitely makes a difference. I think.
I think so too.
Yeah, maybe it's just semantics, but at least then that the person doesn't have that feeling of I was betrayed and I didn't know about it.
Of course, if I and it's a total possibility. We talk about this all the time. If all of a sudden my husband's DNA is on Ancestry, if all of a sudden a child comes up for his, I would first of all see how old that child is.
Right. Yeah.
But it wouldn't be surprising.
Right. Right.
A little bit because, there are ways to prevent that. But,
But it wouldn't have been a betrayal to you.
And I certainly wouldn't reject that child,
right.
especially because of who I am.
Right.
But, I would.
Then you wonder, like in someone who was married to a BG, she also might be thinking like, oh, who is this crackpot? Because we've had all these crazy people that were fans that's, oh, I love him so, or whatever. So people.
Right.
Yeah. So.
It reminds me of, remember in my blog or when I was telling the story that somebody had contacted me on 23andMe with the suggestion that maybe my father was a Beatle.
Yes, that's right.
I love that story.
See?
Because they figured out when I was conceived and saw that the Beatles had been in town for 5 days right around that time.
Oh, my God.
He was convinced of it.
I love that.
I do, too. All right.
And just tell me one more time, which Beatle would it have been?
Which
Beatle would you want it to have been?
Oh, Paul McCartney.
Yeah? Oh, yeah. No, because some people are just, George Harrison or Ringo.
Well, John Lennon, it would be cool too.
Yeah.
But, this is the weirdest thing to be thinking. You know who I actually thought it was, if it was one of them? When the Beatles were in Melbourne, Ringo had appendicitis, and they had to bring in a fake drummer. And he had to stay in England to have his appendix out. And they brought in this fake drummer who was like for 5 days a Beatle.
Yeah. And so he would have been their father, right?
And it would have been him.
So, yeah. For me, it would have been like some roadie.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I'm thinking, I wonder which one is my dad. George Paul? Is it Ringo? You know, no, it's
Bob.
some road. Yeah, Bob, some roadie they hired, and they fired him because he was smoking weed out in the back and didn't do his job. Anyway.
All right, let's take a break.
Thank you for listening to Cut Off Genes with Julie Dixon Jackson and Richard Castle. You can support us by going to patreon.com/Cutoff Genes podcast. Now, back to the program.
Hey, everybody. I have on the phone Lesley Mitchell from Queensland, Australia. Hi, Lesley.
Hi, Julie. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for taking my call.
You're welcome.
Okay. Lesley is a biological mother, and I'm very happy to have her tell us her journey that I think is so relevant. Tell us how it all started.
So I was raised in a small country town, middle of Queensland, with a great group of friends. It was a fantastic life. So 18 months before I fell pregnant, my father ran away from home.
Meaning what?
Meaning he left with another woman, a friend of the family.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So when I fell pregnant, my mum had been already struggling to keep a roof over our head and food on the table. Friends who knew of our situation would regularly leave food at our doorstep,
Yeah.
casseroles and fruit and whatever. I wasn't in a committed relationship, but I was besotted with him. He was 3 years older than me, and I was 18 at the time. And he was completely focused on his career. So when I fell pregnant, I didn't tell him about the pregnancy because I knew his plans were to go to London. That's if he wasn't there already. And knowing about the pregnancy wouldn't have made any difference to his plans.
Right.
And it's been proven recently that my intuition was correct.
Oh, really?
My son's father doesn't want anything to do with either of us.
Ugh, okay.
Although recently my son met his brother on his father's side and they get on really well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when I fell pregnant, my mother didn't yell at me. She didn't accuse me of anything. She just took it all on the chin and as is my mother's way, we never really discussed anything. And at one point I said to her that people were starting to talk, as people do, and so she found a family in Brisbane who took in expectant single mothers.
Okay.
To help look after their children and do light housework. So they were a lovely family. They treated me like one of the family. The ironic thing that I found was that I was capable enough to look after 3 little people under the age of 5, but I wasn't deemed capable of looking after my one child.
So you were basically brought in as like a nanny.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So nothing was ever discussed with me, really. Not even moving there.
It just happened. There was no conversation at all.
Yeah. And I knew from teenage talk prior to being pregnant that there was no chance of me being able to keep my baby because single mothers just weren't allowed to.
Yeah, so you just assumed.
And knowing our family situation just compounded that. So I was always a very compliant teen. And I just never questioned it. I never rebelled against it. It was just, that's how it was going to be. That's how it was. That's how it was for everyone. That was how it was for every single pregnant woman.
Yeah. When was this?
1971.
Okay.
I had Shane on the 7th of January 1972.
Okay.
I hoped and prayed that anyone would come up with a plan that would allow me to keep him. There were resources available in Australia, but they were never revealed to single expectant mothers.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I heard
Yeah.
that there was a lot of that. There actually was help for young single mothers, but they didn't let them know about those options because
No.
it was an industry, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. It wasn't until 1973 that another resource came into play.
Okay.
So we just missed out by, well, maybe 18 months. I can't remember a lot of this week that I was in the hospital. I can remember certain things as clear as I haven't been able to get hold of my medical files. Supposedly they've been destroyed, which is convenient.
Isn't it amazing how many things are destroyed when they're kind of vital to you? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that would answer so many questions for me.
Do you think, were you drugged?
I believe so.
Oh, boy.
So I know we were given stilbestrol, which was to dry up our milk, and that was administered without consent, of course.
Was that ahead of time, before you gave birth?
I
don't know if that's a thing.
I'm
I
not
don't know.
aware. I'm not aware.
Okay.
Only about 2 months ago, I found out about another drug, and I'm really sus about it. It's called scopolamine.
Uh-huh.
And apparently it can block memories, and it's also used in mind control.
Oh, my
And
gosh.
it was used in the baby scoop era.
Really?
And I have huge chunks of memories missing from that week.
Yeah.
And you'd think I'd remember. I can remember signing the consent form.
Mm-hmm.
There was no alternative at all, at all. And even right until I walked out of the hospital, I still thought someone will tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, we've come up with a way. But it never happened.
Yeah.
The revocation period was 30 days. I was never told of that.
Right. It was 30 days. Okay.
I accidentally found out when I was about 60 days. That was just devastation all over again. My medical forms would have been marked with BFA right from the start. So that's baby for adoption.
Uh-huh.
I'd love to see my files.
Yeah. I can't believe you haven't seen it. I mean, I have mine. That.
No. I wish I could see my medical file.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I guess we never got my biological mother's medical
We've got
files.
Shane applied for his adoption forms,
Yeah.
and I've applied for what I'm eligible for, and we've got those.
Oh, but the medical form is from the hospital, and
Yeah.
they have their own set of rules, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It tells another whole story.
Right.
Yeah.
So you were dissociating. Did you ever let yourself imagine what if he finds me? What if?
No. Oh, well, that's a whole other story.
Oh,
so
okay.
in the hospital, the day after I had him, they told me that he was so ill he most likely would never leave the hospital.
Oh my gosh!
And that was the only thing I was ever told. It was the last thing I was ever told, and so that's what I had in my mind for 44 years.
You thought he probably died.
Yeah, and I didn't want to search for him because I didn't want that confirmed.
You felt like it'd be better off not knowing.
Yeah.
Did you see him at all in the hospital?
No.
You didn't? Okay.
No. Immediately, I don't think he even touched the table when I birthed him.
Oh.
He was just cut off me and whipped out of the room so fast. My head spun.
Gosh.
Yeah. I can't remember if it was a sheet or a pillow. I can't remember why I couldn't see him. Yeah, but I heard him cry as I took him out the doorway.
Oh.
Yeah, that was it.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine what that is like.
Yeah.
After having my own kids, it was, and that traumatized me too. After for my mother. Because after I had my kids, I realized the connection that you have.
Yeah,
And I just can't imagine it being gone immediately.
Yeah. I was pretty gobsmacked the difference in births of Shane and my other two.
Yeah.
It was surreal. Like, the difference was just like night and day.
Yeah, tell me a little more about that.
I didn't know a lot about childbirth. I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't know what was normal and what wasn't normal.
Okay. So were you expecting to be in a fog again with the other two? Just because you thought that was standard for giving birth?
Yeah, I guess I probably thought it was the because there was about 7 or 8 years between Shane and my next one. And maybe I thought that was a difference. I mean, I did know that being married made a difference. But the birth with Shane, I had a few medical people. I don't know who they were. I guess they were nurses. Were in the room with me. And it was abuse from beginning to end.
Abuse how?
Verbal abuse. Not physical.
Okay.
But verbal abuse, yeah, pretty bad.
Like what kind of things?
So they gave me an epidural without consent. I didn't know what an epidural was. I thought everyone had whatever they were doing to me. I thought that's what everyone does.
Yeah.
But that's how it is. I can remember at one stage during the birth, one of the nurses, one of the people who were in the room, I don't know if it was a nurse or a doctor, said, "Let her rip."
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awful. Okay.
I remember that clear as day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
So you can imagine how the rest of it went.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my punishment, I guess.
Were they berating you at all?
Yeah, yeah. And I was told it was my punishment.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the end of part 1 with Lesley.
Great.
I love listening to her. When I first called her, she said, "Hello, darling." She reminded me of my mother, my biological mother in Australia. She always says, "Hello, darling."
That's sweet.
Yeah. She's lovely. We'll hear the second half of that next week.
I look forward to it. I am Richard Castle, and I'm a songwriter, pianist, and musical theater writer. I have a website. If you care to look at that, it is richardcastle.com, or you can follow me on the Twitter at Castle Songs.
You know what happened?
What?
I didn't thank any patrons today. So
Well,
I'm going to do it now.
Let's do it.
So let me see. We have, Kay Kavanaugh, Rebecca Corson, Rob Fisher. That's my brother, everyone. Sherry Bale, who was our story time a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
Sydney Levesque, Steve Sunseth, Tanya Barton. And that's it.
Thank you so much, patrons. We really appreciate it. Thank you for your support.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Tanya Barton, by the way, was that one lady that was a DNA match to me for years.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then she was she was looking at her matches and she realized she matched me. And immediately she said, "Oh my gosh, you matched me." I said, "Are you Tanya Boodle?"
Oh, funny. That's right.
Because I've been looking at her name for years. Anyway, hey everybody, I am Julie Dixon Jackson. You can find me on the Twitter at Jules Jackson with 2 O's. Find the podcast at CutOff Jeans Pod. Find our Facebook group. Send me an email at julesjackson@cutoffjeans.com. Please contact me if you'd like to tell your story. I'd love to talk to you. And there you go.
And please consider supporting us as those wonderful people did on patreon.com/cutoffjeanspodcast. / I can never get those. I don't know if I'm coming or going.
It's leaning forward.
There you go.
Oh my
there
gosh.
you go.
All right.
That's, she always, you know what, Julie always tells me the truth.
And you know what else?
What?
The truth is in your jeans.